Brady, we're recording.
Oh. Oh, sorry. I was just marking off one of these theories from last week, right? We had said Javi's friend or cabin daddy left the supplies in the pit, the KUH, and we stand corrected because we did watch the episode again, and we did hear Hannah and Edwin say that the supplies were left by a previous frog expedition.
Yes.
So it must be some sort of university, KUH, where they study frogs. Someone had mentioned herpetology. Herpetology is the study of frogs.
Oh, not herpes? Okay. Herpetology. Anyway.
Let's just get to the beginning. Let's get to this episode.
Let's get rolling.
Welcome to Seaview Circle. This is our recap podcast where we review our favorite TV shows and movies of the past, present, and possibly the future, all in service to our end goal determining just how highbrow or lowbrow our viewing taste is. We also talk about vintage styles and fashions, sometimes filming locations as well. What are we covering today, Doug?
Well, today we are covering Yellowjackets Season 3, Episode 8. It's entitled A Normal, Boring Life. The director is Anya Adams. The writer is Julia Bicknell. And the synopsis is, with a possible escape from this nightmare, the Yellowjackets learn not everyone is in a rush to leave. In the present, the unexpected return of an old teammate sends Shauna spiraling in ways that should probably concern everyone, us included.
Wow, that was a huge episode. I think I took the most notes of anything so far. 7 pages of notes.
Me too.
I don't know why I thought that it was going to slow down after the last 2 episodes.
No.
But we actually met Liv Hewson the other night, and they told us that we should expect the last 2 episodes to be just as crazy as episodes 6 and 7.
Yeah, we met Liv the other night when we were actually DJing this premiere for a new TV show called Mid-Century Modern.
All episodes streaming now on Hulu. You should check it out. It's like the modern day gay Golden Girls starring Nathan Lane.
And it was a gay affair indeed.
The party was fun!
It was fun. Now, the thing I was very proud of was that I said to Liv, I'm not going to ask you about any spoilers. Don't worry. I was just very proud to meet them and just said I really enjoyed their performance.
I have to say I was fangirling a little bit. I might have even done one of these I bow down to you kind of things. And they saw me and they were like, me? And I was like, yeah, you.
Yeah, we were like, come here, please, please take a picture.
So Liv came behind the DJ deck and we got to meet them. And I did commend them for those amazing Thursday recaps that are dropped over on the Yellowjackets social media. And I asked them, did you write those? Because they're amazing. And they said yes, they do kind of write them because it is expected of the actors and the cast to do some promotion for the show. And I think Liv said that they preferred to kind of be more in control of that. And so they came up with the idea of, would you like me to shoot these little recaps and you can use them, you can use them or not. And obviously they're so good that they ended up using them. And anyway, Liv was an absolute delight. And thank you for hanging out with us for a little bit. It was really fun.
We enjoyed that. That was real fun. It was a treat.
Yes. Getting into the episode, we have we don't really know what this is at first. It is young Shauna, and she is a checkout lass at a grocery store.
Yeah, and the return of Jackie.
Yes, Jackie is the customer that comes in, and I have to say at this moment I was a little confused because I thought maybe this was a flash forward to actual, when they get back.
That's the same thing I thought too. I kept thinking, is this are we going to another timeline now?
This is the normal, boring life that they return to, right? But then we see Jackie, and we know it is some sort of dream because, of course, when it comes down the conveyor belt are
body parts.
It's
really gross.
From the meat department. And also there was some hot chocolate, if you notice, which I think was interesting because it factors into those last moments of Jackie and that passing dream. So that makes me believe that was really Shauna's dream then, because she would have known about the hot chocolate then in that moment. Interesting callback.
And of course, it was like a really tense interaction between both of them.
Shauna says, I didn't like you ever calling me shipman.
So I almost
Jackie's
felt like
kind of ridiculing her, like, this is how your life turned out,
Yeah.
Checkout girl at a grocery store.
they did a really good job too with that vintage grocery store.
Yeah.
Really, it's super like New Jersey style of like
I'm
old school.
I'm wondering if that is the grocery store that is in Woodland Hills that I've shot an episode of Barry at.
We talked about that before.
It's very, very familiar, the layout. I don't know. Could be.
Have we seen it before in this show, or is it just in
Well,
another show?
I think we've seen it in many shows.
Okay.
They use it a lot of times when they need like a vintage grocery store. So that could be it. I can't
the
remember
one
the
that's
name
in
of it.
West Hills.
Yeah, West Hills.
Okay.
Yeah.
I forget what
But
it's
anyway,
called.
what's really interesting about this scene, again, this interplay with Jackie and Shauna, of course, but then all of a sudden there's like this swarm of, well, we find out they're, I guess, moths.
I thought they were giant Yellowjackets at first because they were kind of yellowish in color.
Yes.
But then, it reminded me immediately of what?
Silence of the Lambs.
I kept thinking of the cover of Silence of the Lamb and that giant,
the
scary
Jodie
looking
Foster
moth.
with the big moth, and I think that is what those are. Actually, I saw Amanda G, our friend over on TikTok, and she did a little expose about this as well, and talks about kind of like what those moths do, and I guess they can actually destroy hives of bees. And they're able to sort of mimic their sound and their scent, and they go in to destroy the beehive. So that's an interesting correlation, and I think that's probably what that is meant to be. Now, I also thought, though, it was an interesting call to Jackie's shirt. Okay, so Jackie's shirt from season 1 has the butterflies on it.
I remember
and
that.
here we have Shauna now in the current season, and she wears that shirt all the time. We have determined, we believe, that Shauna really is in love with Jackie. And I think this is a huge, important relationship that factors into this particular episode. We see it here in this first scene, but I think it comes full circle later on. So I think that's what that kind of is this guilt of what happened with Jackie. Shauna has never gotten over the fact that it was her bitching her out that forced her out of the cabin into the cold dark of night where she froze to death.
And she could have gone back out there and got her.
Yeah.
Like in the dream.
Yeah.
That could have happened.
We're going to come back to this because I think, again, there's some more symbolism with the meat and all that stuff. We'll get to it. But so that's kind of the end of that scene. Shauna wakes up. Modern day Shauna wakes up.
And she's in the car.
Yeah.
Where we've left the last episode.
Right.
So obviously it's morning.
Probably Virginia, right? Somewhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Very early morning,
Yes.
as we determine.
Yes.
I mean, she's so ballsy. She sneaks into the house. And I kept thinking, how are you just like sneaking in there?
It's crazy. She's got the knife in her sleeve, of her flannel. She loves a flannel top, doesn't she?
I'm actually sporting a little bit of, this is an homage to Shauna today.
Look,
we haven't seen Walter for a few weeks,
Yeah.
and I did a Walter look for a couple of weeks, and looks a couple of weeks
I've
in a row.
done my Misty, I've done my tie. Now it's time to get into the Shauna. Okay, so she goes in there, got the knife, and she slips in somehow, and she immediately hears there are some sounds of children or something.
And you see children's drawings, too.
Right,
Remember, they're like
right.
crown drawings.
It's a beautiful modern day farmhouse abode and beautifully styled inside.
yes.
Yes. How much would that go for in California, Doug?
I mean, it's probably a $2 million house in California.
Yeah.
But maybe in Virginia. I mean, I know Virginia's
In
expensive,
Virginia,
too.
$250,000.
No, I bet you it's $1 million in Virginia.
Okay. So she slips into the closet or something. It's in the kitchen, though. And who do we see come out?
Well, we see a woman with dark hair who we assume is Alex, and we do find out
Hannah's
it is
daughter,
her.
yes.
And then we also see that she has a daughter.
Yes.
And then, out of the blue, we see Hilary Swank's
And she has
character.
a hat, a cap to the back, kids.
Yep, she's still sporting that
So
look.
here we go. We officially can write that off, that Hilary Swank is playing Melissa. Can't believe she is still wearing the hat to the back.
Well, I did see this week, too, there were a bunch of people, like, posting theories. And there were a couple of people going, like, there was even actually one person, I'm not going to name the name of the website, but they do reviews of episodes, and they got it wrong. And I kept thinking, like, all you needed to do was read the IMDb like we did last week to see that it's like the character of Alex was played by not Hilary Swank. They did kind of get us.
People were not wanting Hilary Swank to be playing Melissa because they see the younger Melissa as a very sort of simple character. So they can't imagine that, Academy Award winning Hilary Swank would be playing the grown-up Melissa. But we see that this character has had a lot of growth, and I'm really happy they kind of delved into this. Here we have our new core 8 survivor here in Melissa, played by Hilary Swank. And I'm sure that the Reddit fan base was going crazy because do you know that the kind of like the relationship name that they've given Shauna and Melissa is ShaunaHat.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay. Because people you say in season 2, you got the Jen, Melissa, and the Crystal in the background all of a sudden, right? These extra jackets that have been promoted. And they're like, who are these people? So they just casually called her Hat. They called Melissa Hat.
Oh, I think
because she's just always wearing the hat, right?
Hat.
And here she is wearing the hat again. So here we have the coming together of ShaunaHat.
I got to say, too, all the scenes that involved Hilary Swank in this episode, they were really filled with a lot of exposition, a lot of tying up.
A lot of details, yeah.
A lot of tying up of like all these things that we didn't know.
Tying them all up.
So I thought that was really good, and she did a great job.
Yeah, she did.
I mean, I've seen her in a few movies. Yeah. I can't like tell you off the top of my head. Like
Boys Don't Cry was her, big breakthrough. I think that was, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that is 90s or maybe, I think it's 90s. And, it was a stunning, stunning performance. She's great. And I do think she does deliver this sort of nice mix of tenderness, but also like super deliberate, direct approach. And I think that works here.
And
with,
she definitely, she channeled the young Melissa perfectly.
Yeah.
She did a great job.
A growth of that character. And I thought that was really great. So already she consents after her wife, Alex, leaves with the child. Thank God they're out of the house for this part. For what happens the rest of the episode.
She must still have that wilderness sixth sense.
Yes.
She knows somebody's in there.
Somebody's there. And she says, you don't know who you're messing with. And then Shauna comes out with her knife and she says, I know exactly who I'm messing with. And it's revealed in that moment that Shauna's like, how are you still alive?
Right. I guess she had done a fake suicide.
Yes.
So she just, she wrote a suicide note and then I guess she disappeared.
Right. And so then she said that she had done that because when they got back from the wilderness after the rescue, which, we'll talk about, she felt like she didn't fit in with the rest of them.
Right.
And so she just needed to be away on her own. And she really did rebuild her life. Now, there is this whole talk about the tape, right? And it is revealed that she got the tape because Hannah told her where that recorder was. They had gotten close out in the wilderness, and Hannah had asked Melissa, please give it to my daughter if you can, if you get out. But Melissa does state to Shauna, though, that she has not given the tape to Alex, which is great news for, I guess, the Yellowjackets. She says that she's been kind of watching Alex from afar, kind of watching over her on behalf of Hannah all these years, but that eventually they met in person and that she fell in love with her, which is just wild.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
And then it was funny because didn't Shauna ask her, are you still in love with me? Is that why you disappeared all those years?
Oh, yeah. That was really a strong scene where she was just like, I never loved you.
Well, she says, I may never have loved you, I think, or something like that.
I may never have. Well, I took it as kind of talks about.
Maybe I never did. Maybe I never did. But like, she seems very dismissive. She says, you scared the shit out of me. Yeah. That's one of the reasons why she disappeared as well when they came back. And here we have, Shauna with a knife right now. And by the way, I don't know if we mentioned, Melissa also picked up a knife as well.
Yeah, they're like ready to duel.
And then Shauna had said, put your knife down. And she said, I'm not putting my knife down if you got yours. And then Shauna says, I'm not asking.
Yeah. I was really frightened.
It was really ballsy.
I got to tell you, it's like, if anything, adult Shauna in this episode just scared me all the way through.
This was a moment where we are let into Shauna quite a bit. I mean, not really by her, just by other people kind of observing who this woman really is. It's a big turning point for this adult character.
Yeah.
Melissa goes on to say, because Shauna is questioning, how is this possible? How can this happen? How can you be with the daughter of Hannah all these years and be married to her? Like, what is this? And Melissa really, goes into this big, long thing about how she has a great life now.
She's a normal, boring life. A normal, boring life.
A normal, boring life. And then Shauna says, just super coldly, none of that matters to me.
None of that matters to me. She is so cold. And that's where I got really scared, to be quite honest.
Really scared
and
for,
of course,
Melissa.
We can talk about where the episode will end as well
a
little bit later.
Yes, we'll jump back to this storyline.
Back to the storyline.
We cut to Misty calling Shauna, wondering where she is. And there's just this really great line Misty says, and you'll have to pardon my French. She says, where are you? Where are you? cute, actually.
Yeah. Cute, actually.
Oh my gosh. It's great that there's some comedic breaks in this episode because, of course, like the last couple, it's really intense in other parts.
I want to say one thing about Misty in general through this whole episode, which I thought was really fun to see. As far as the adult timeline goes, now it feels like Misty is the most sane of everybody.
I know.
Which was like, okay, boy, they turned the tables on us again.
Here we go in the season 1, and Misty is like the complete freak doing all this crazy stuff. And now we've completely reverted to where Shauna is the biggest, baddest monster of them all. And Misty is the one that's trying to hold everybody together or like get beyond all this stuff. It's crazy.
She's got the most sense out of everybody at
People
this point.
are saying that the quote unquote ultimate survivor may be Misty, and they're saying it because obviously in the pilot she was the only one that was revealed at the very end with the antler queen scene when she pulls up her thing, but also because it's an interesting correlation that she destroys the emergency responder box to start all this, and she does it because she's looking for community and looking for friends and looking for connection. And so ultimately she's the last one. And maybe, she, if you take into account like the wilderness or whatever, she's the one that really appeased the wilderness because she's trapped them all there. So I would like that. I have to say I would like if adult Misty was the final survivor. Anyway, in this...
Only time will tell.
Only time will tell. In this scene, though, she is at the hospital with Ty, and the nurse comes to Ty and tells her, Van's not doing well at all. It is time to maybe consider some palliative care.
Yeah. And then did you notice this was really weird because the doctor put her hand on Ty to kind of like comfort her for a second, and Ty
recoiled.
Yeah, she looked really
well, because it's other Ty, right? It's other Ty. When other Ty hears this, other Ty is so intense. And so Misty says, I can help you with that because obviously I work at a nursing center. And Ty's like, no, it is not time for that. But then when she thinks about it, she goes, palliative care. Misty, hey, where's that you can go find out about that palliative care. They go to the wing because other Ty has an agenda.
Right. And then they find somebody who appears to be passing soon.
Right.
And then
has some heart condition. And I love the fact that she's relying on Misty's medical knowledge to
Misty.
Find
like, how long does this person have to
find
live?
a victim?
I mean, this was the freaky moment, which, of course, we've seen in the press photos,
trailer,
too, where we see the Ty with the pillow.
Yeah.
Well, I actually thought it was going to be that weird guy who was screaming about the devil.
Yeah.
Remember in the last episode?
Sure.
I actually wrote it down again because I wonder if this is going to come back. But, like, he identified Ty as the devil, right? He said, ring, ring, the devil's calling.
Right.
And then I kept thinking of the Ozzy phone call.
And thinking of the phone call that Van picked up, right? This weird mystery phone call. We do hear that same sound again. I don't know if it's Morse code or what it is, but it's this weird sound effect that keeps happening around other Ty. But this moment was just so great. Misty's in there and she's like, I can see what she's doing. She's going to kill this person. Now, I don't know if Misty knows the connection of the, paying a blood sacrifice to the wilderness or not, but she does know that other Ty is on the loose. And so Misty's like, don't do it. And then Ty is sitting there, other Ty is sitting there struggling with this pillow, and she just screams, fuck.
Yeah, and then she can't do it.
She can't do it.
And then the guy, all of a sudden, he just flatlines.
He just flatlines.
So she killed him by shocking him,
She killed him by shocking him, and I have to say, this has got to be one of the funniest dark comedy lines of all time. Well, maybe at least of this series.
The guy flatlines, and she says, does that count? So the
delivery was so great as well. Connie Cypress did a great job with that. And then Misty's in the background and she's just like, we got to get out of here.
Yeah. And I'd say in the whole episode, there was obviously really dark, scary stuff, but there was certainly an element of comedy which goes through the whole episode.
Yeah, for sure. Now, but later on, we have another dramatic scene with Ty, or other Ty.
Well, it's weird because you see the hospital corridor and you see Ty like outside the door.
Yeah, she's going to Van's room to see if that potential sacrifice has done anything to better Van's condition. We actually don't see Lauren Ambrose in this episode, I don't believe.
She's not in this episode.
So anyway, she goes to the door and then suddenly she's inside And then Tai is on the other side in the hallway again. And we have the other Tai and the Tai meeting. And basically other Tai is locking regular Tai out.
Yeah.
So real Tai is being asked to be let in, and other Tai says, no, you can't do what needs to be done.
I know.
And you never did believe, or something like that. You never could do what needed to be done. And it's really sad because then you have Tai outside and she's basically saying, I love you. Please let me in. I love you, meaning Van, obviously. Yeah. And it's like this moment where you think maybe Van is not going to make it.
I don't know.
And Tai will not have a final moment with her.
I'm kind of worried about this, to be quite honest.
I am
I'm
too.
A little stressed out
I am
by it.
too. We're going to talk about it at the end of the episode.
Oh,
but
okay.
now, I think it's time to check in with the kids, right? Let's check in with the kids.
Yeah, we need to go see the kids. What are the kids getting up to?
What are the kids getting up to?
We've got Misty. It's the next morning. She's waking up and she does not have her glasses.
Right.
And she's like, I kept getting nervous too on this one. I
know.
She's feeling around. I kept thinking, like, is there going to be like a bear trap
That's what
or something?
I thought too. It was something very sinister about the way that was filmed. In a way, it felt like maybe, I don't know, like an Ewok was going to pop out at any moment. Like it really looked like that forest from Return of the Jedi.
Oh, Sindel. Maybe Sindel would show up.
I think Sindel and Misty probably would have been friends.
Oh, they have the same hair. But then she gets lucky and she finds her glasses and like only one lens is cracked.
We do see in the pilot episode, Misty puts on her glasses and they're cracked. So this is that continuity going back to that pilot episode again. I think it was really cool to see that moment. So she gets up and then she's obviously on the look to find out whatever happened to Akilah and Travis. We cut to them and Travis is leading Akilah and they're basically pushing Cody forward. Basically, Travis has decided that they're just going to leave now.
Yeah,
let's get Cody to take us out of the wilderness right now. Forget about all the rest of the people.
Yeah, and I think he kind of says to Akilah that they're going to go back. They can go back and get them.
It'll be easier to go get help and bring them back, right? But Akilah's like, are you sure this is a good idea?
Well, you can see by the look on her face and also by her actions, right? She takes a piece of that very stylish.
I don't know where that stylish fabric came from.
She has that style. I would say, in general, she's the most stylish one in this episode. Mm-hmm. So she puts a little piece of yarn on the tree. And of course, what we see eventually is that Misty finds it.
The other thing that Travis does here when Akilah is questioning what his motives are is he comes clean finally about Lottie's visions. He says that he was just tripping balls on the mushrooms. And he says, you know it too. This was all just the noxious gases in the cave. None of this is real. And Akilah's like, we'll see more of that later. But I thought it was cool because we've been questioning this all season long.
Been seeing
we actually already crossed it off on our list last week that we're pretty sure that Travis was making this up. And here it was.
Yeah, I mean, you could see from the looks on his face that he was like, he's just going along with it.
Yeah, and actually now that I guess the whole camp hasn't seen Lottie when she had all the blood in her face yet, maybe. But obviously the whole camp at this point knows that Lottie is completely nuts.
And you know what I find interesting is that even when what we spoke about before with Melissa saying, well, she was scared of Shauna.
Sure.
I mean, in the same way, don't you think Travis would be scared of all the crazies too?
Sure.
So of course, a bunch of the teens are probably frightened to death.
Yes.
So you got to go along with it.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that comes into play. That comes into play a little bit later and we'll get to it. Well, back at the camp, we have that scene that we've kind of been talking about for a while, which is Hannah sitting in the airline seat or whatever, and she's being interrogated by all the Yellowjackets. It's kind of like frantic, fast-paced question.
Oh, right. And then there's a lot of comedy in this one, too.
Yeah.
There's I know Van said something like, did Mulder and Scully ever get together? That was one thing. And then there was a really weird question, which was just like, what day is it?
Yeah, sure.
They didn't even know, what...
Yeah.
I thought that maybe they would have been keeping track of the days.
I guess not.
It's kind of weird.
You can imagine after, how long they've been away, 16 months at this point, or 15 months, that it's got to be pretty disorienting.
Yeah.
There's some interesting little moments here, right? Obviously, they're very curious if Hannah had ever heard about the crash. And Hannah says that, yes, she does remember this being a thing. Really one of the most important questions Tai has, which is anybody still searching for us?
Yeah, but she said they looked for them for months and months, but then I guess she didn't hear anything again, which, is very typical of like news media, let's face it.
Sure. And it very much disappoints Shauna. She can't believe that her friends and family and everybody would have stopped looking for them.
Yeah, I think Shauna seemed like she was the most tormented by all that. She was just very like angry. Like, how could they do that?
Right.
And in a weird way, I kept thinking at this point, this is maybe where we see Shauna fully disconnects from that family unit, probably forever.
I think you are probably right. This is the seeds of what we see later on in this particular episode. And then, of course, we also have them asking Hannah, can you get us out of here? And Hannah says, listen, we were just with that guy, Cody. He's the only one that knows how to get out of here. I have no idea where we are. And that is also disappointing for everybody, right?
It's just becoming very apparent that they're going to have to get Cody.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to have to find Cody. Of course, they don't know where he is yet. Then Hannah also asks, you can kind of see like, are you the team captain? Referring to Shauna. There's this great moment because Melissa's in the background. She's sort of like,
yeah, she gives this really weird look. And then
Natalie says, no, she's not the team captain. And then Shauna says, well, you're not either. And then Natalie says, yeah, because the team captain's dead. Referring to Jackie. And again, I think there is this moment on Shauna's face where she's reminded of that again. And, we have this Melissa character, and we'll get into it more. She's obviously the sort of diversion in season 3 for Shauna, and also someone who is her ally for her agenda, whatever that may be. But clearly it is a replacement for this Jackie relationship, this very close relationship that Shauna had in high school. And again, this guilt again of her causing this person to die. So it's really interesting dynamics going on here. And again, I think it does lead into what happens later.
And then did you notice that Hannah also was like at the point where she starts getting a little scared about that, then she's very like, oh, it's very impressive what you guys did here. Yeah. So she's kind of like trying to butter them up a little bit.
She's definitely playing a little bit of a game here for sure. And remember, she has a child back at home, right? So she really wants to figure out a way to get back to her, right?
I think it'll be pretty interesting to see how this is going to all play out in the next season as well, because we obviously know Jen and Melissa are going to get close to Hannah.
Yeah.
So we're going to get a lot of that, and I don't think there's any way that they're going to be able to like really delve into that in we got 2 more episodes to the end?
We're going to talk about it.
Okay. All right.
So then Misty comes back, and, Misty was on the scent. She had already kind of picked up, one of those woven pieces of fabric that Akilah had left in the tree. So she says, oh, I know where they are. And so that causes the team to get all excited because maybe they can track down this guide that can take them out of the wilderness, right?
Now, meanwhile, Lottie's like on the side looking really like catatonic and weird. Like she's like, got the blood still.
So I think they all go off to look for Cody, Travis, and Akilah, and then Shauna says, I think it's to Ty, maybe. Ty, make sure you watch Hannah, and also...
And her. Yeah, I was like, okay, we got some crazies. We got a captive. I mean, it's getting intense.
It's getting intense. So switching back over then to Akilah, Cody, and Travis, Akilah is definitely stalling because she assumes that someone is going to find those pieces of ribbon and that they are going to come after them and find where they are. So she's pretending she has a rock in her shoe. She can't go on or whatever. And then
you hear like a little like
there's a little rustling in the bush.
Yeah, rustling in the bush.
Again, this moment was right out of Return of the Jedi. When the rebels are out there in the forest, then all of a sudden they see there's rustling and all the Ewoks come out.
See, I thought of it more of like, I wrote down on my notes, I was like, oh, it's the Manson girls. I even brought this, just as a little tribute, because I have this, I actually haven't even listened to this yet, but it's the Manson Family Sings. It's that same kind of mentality. They're all like so loony.
Yeah.
They would do this kind of stuff. They'll kill for the leader or whatever,
so you got to worry when these girls come out of the bush.
Yeah, you got to be. This is not Spawn Ranch, okay? This is, scary.
So immediately they're like, we're taking him back. And this is that moment you were kind of referring to earlier about Travis, where he has to fall right back in line with the tribe. It's just like on Survivor. If you go to tribal council and you vote against the majority tribe or whatever, you have to answer for that back at camp.
Well,
and that's the time where you go right back into line of what you were doing before.
Akilah did kind of the same thing too, which I thought was weird. She's obviously aligned with the ladies back at the camp, but at the same time, she
did cover for Travis.
Yeah, she covered for him.
They both covered for each other, which I thought was interesting. I'm kind of hoping for a Travis Akilah little romance moment. I'm kind of hoping for that. I don't know if we're going to get it. Like you said, there's not a lot of episodes left in this season.
I don't even know if there's going to be any time for romance at this point.
I know. There's so much going on.
I mean, I kept thinking the Cody, maybe there's going to be a Cody romance between Cody and Hannah at least.
Yeah.
But, you got to do something to keep warm out there.
You got to do something to keep warm out. Yeah, and
it's going to get cold soon.
We do see when we get back to camp that we do have Cody and Hannah together on that airline seat. Now they're both tied up, so maybe they're going to have some more time to get to know each other.
I think we're going to get some good interactions between those two.
So at this point, they're interrogating Cody. They want to know how far away are they from, civilization.
I think they mentioned they're 6 days away.
6 days of heavy hiking. And so Natalie is immediately excited. She's like, okay, everybody, get all your things. We're going to head out.
Start packing.
Yeah. And then I think it's Lottie who says, no, we can't do that because we don't belong back there anymore. And then Natalie says something really cold. She's like, why should we be listening to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, she does have a point.
Yes. But there are other concerns as well. Misty comes up to Natalie and Shauna maybe and says, have you thought about what we're going to do with these two once we get back to civilization? They know things. They've seen things.
I thought this was kind of interesting because you're getting a little bit more of the Misty 2.0 teen version now, where she really is graduating to this other level, which we'll see her as an
feeling
adult.
That too, even with that Ben stuff too. I think that was a big moment, that kiss.
Yeah.
Right? It was like she was maturing there in a way.
So she's actually thinking about consequences at this point rather than just being like, oh, whatever.
But in that moment, they kind of said, oh, well, we'll just figure it out when we get there. So at this point, Natalie is asking everybody to scramble and get their things. Of course, they also tell Hannah and Cody, oh, you should probably bury your friend there because they don't want any of that evidence lying around. Now, we'll come back to that whole scene later on because it's actually a really fun sequence. But let's go back to the adult timeline and spend some time with Jeff and Callie.
Yeah, Jeff and Callie are back at the Jolly
They're
Hitcher.
back at the lobby bar of the Jolly Hitcher. This is where Shauna and Adam had their first date. It's
yes,
so sweet.
In fact, I wanted to mention something about this. They are actually staying in the same, the two rooms are 2106 and 2107. Somebody posted a picture from that first interaction where Adam was staying with Shauna. So it's the same room.
I can't.
Yeah, it's the same room where all that stuff went down.
I love this show.
Yeah, so I thought that was really funny. I'll have to look back again, but it was on
you guys.
It was on one of those Yellowjackets groups on Facebook.
So in this moment, Jeff sees the Joel. Well, he called them the Joels, the two Joels, even though only one of them is named Joel. So they sort of wave him to come over, and he's like going to get up to do it. And Callie's like, "What are you doing?" And he says, well, some people are the kind of people that wave people over, and others are the ones who come when they're waved at.
Which I thought was pretty ironic because, again, we know that he is one of those people that will come when you wave to him because Shauna's been waving to him, for
will the waving
25
stop?
years.
Will the coming when being waved stop in this episode? We shall see. In this moment, though, he goes over there, and the Joels suggest that when Jeff says he's having a staycation, that he's having an affair with this girl who happens to be his daughter.
Right. They assume that she's an escort, I think.
Oh my
is what
gosh.
I was thinking. Okay. But again, you can tell that's the kind of dudes they are.
Yeah.
They're probably arriving there in their douchemobile, whether it's Ferrari or something like that.
So Jeff and the Joels are interrupted by a call from Misty, and Misty is once again frantic, wondering where Shauna is, right? And she tells Jeff that Shauna left them stranded, right? And so Jeff's like, oh my gosh, what has Shauna done now? And then Misty says, well, that's what I'm curious about too. Where was she the day of Lottie's death? And Jeff reveals, oh, well, we were all together at your nursing facility playing bingo or something like that, right? So that call ends and Callie's like, oh, okay, what's going on? And so they're concerned. We don't know where mom is. Once again, she is on the loose.
She's gone rogue.
But of course, we know that Shauna is currently sitting across the table from her former girlfriend from childhood. They both have knives in front of them. They're getting down to to business.
Super intense conversation
Yeah.
going down on this one.
Right. So I think Melissa reveals that, yes, she did send the tape to Shauna along with a note. This
right.
is important because
that was
this
crucial.
note, we've never seen this note.
We haven't seen this note, but we know who picked up the package.
Yes.
So obviously Callie has read this note.
We'll get to that a little bit later. It's very curious. But what Melissa basically says is that the note explains everything that they're talking about right now, which is the fact that Melissa had the tape from Hannah in a safety deposit box, and she had it all along, and it started like gnawing away at her. She was having these like terrible daydreams thinking about it. And then she went to therapy. Remember?
Right.
This was interesting because...
And it wasn't a normal therapist,
right.
she said.
And she says she's not even really a doctor.
Yeah.
And then that's red flag for Shauna, because that means that person does not have doctor-patient confidentiality.
Okay, right.
So that means that somebody else probably knows about all these things that have happened.
Yeah.
All right. So now that we know, we can cross this off too. Hilary Swank is not just a random person who found the DAT. We all know how this came to be.
Right.
Yay!
There's not so many theories left.
Well,
there's going to be more. Who is this Barbara? Now, it's another mystery that I'm sure we're going to find out about.
Because that's a loose end now for Shauna and the rest of the Yellowjackets.
Knives out.
Knives out. So, she says something like Barbara, and then she says,
Barbara.
oh, yeah, she's very intuitive. And then Shauna says, yeah, Barbaras usually are.
Barbaras usually are.
Shauna goes into this whole thing about, it was definitely you, Melissa, who were stalking me. You are the one who tampered with my brakes. You're the one who left the Queen of Hearts playing in the bathroom. And Melissa's like, what?
I know. At this point, you're going like, oh my God, Shauna,
you're the one who locked me into the freezer.
You are out of your mind. I mean, it's very clear that Melissa has no idea what the heck she's talking about.
Right. And this is that time when Shauna actually says, well, it totally makes sense, because as we are just all know, the only way to survive these secrets is to be the last person standing.
Yeah.
And that's the line from that promo way back at the beginning of the season. This is where it comes into context. So she is just absolutely paranoid.
Now, Melissa didn't even know that Lottie was dead either. That was another thing she mentions, like, Lottie's dead, and she's just like, holy moly. Well, the reason that Melissa has kind of given Shauna the tape in the first place is it's that she had heard all those weird things about what had happened at the cult with Natalie.
Exactly.
So it's kind of tying all this.
That's what this is. When they're questioning why is she coming out of the woodwork now, it's because Melissa, who had the tape, had heard what happened at the cult, or the intentional community, where Natalie was killed and that a cop was killed as well. And so she's putting two and two together. Yeah. And she's thinking, maybe, if you get some help, like I got help with Barbara, maybe you can get past this. And we do see that Melissa has kind of gotten past this. She is actually happy. She does seem to be pretty well adjusted. And so that's what this is kind of showing here, is that it is really all Shauna who is just completely mad. It was a real interesting, unveiling that happened to you, because we were all wrapped up in it too. We're all wrapped up in this paranoia. We're all wrapped up in the suspicion. All of these citizen detectives of these last several episodes.
Well, but the only thing I'm going to say about Shauna's suspicions are there is somebody doing something, maybe on a small level, maybe not all the things, but where's that phone coming from? I mean, don't you think? I mean,
I don't know.
Somebody had to put that phone there.
Well, according to Melissa, she says it's a popular song. Maybe it was used as a ringtone. Maybe the person just left. And there's an explanation for everything. There is an explanation for everything, which is why this show is so clever, because you can really solve every question with a real life answer and then a maybe nefarious or a supernatural answer. That's what we were talking about in the last episode. How clever these writers are. Well, we'll get to more of this later, because obviously this erupts into quite a climax at the end of the episode.
You can say that again.
Because obviously this erupts into quite a climax at the end of the episode.
You can say that again.
Back at camp with the kids, we are burying poor Edwin to Supergrass.
Yeah. I remember that song was so popular in the 90s. At least, was it popular in America?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, they're English groups. So
this was a really really fun scene, actually. You would think a burial wouldn't be so chipper. But yes, we have all the kids. They're starting to think about how life is going to be back at home. I love that moment when Mari is having her water bottle and she puts it down and then she pulls it right back up and she has the Slurpee.
Now, I do apologize because I was hoping that they had the original Slurpee cups. I don't know if they still make them.
The kids want to get back to 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, some of them just want to get back to a toilet. We have Misty trying to wipe herself with a leaf, and then the fantasy is that she is on a full-on thrown toilet with actual
I kept
toilet
thinking
paper.
of like those stupid Charmin commercials or the weird one with the bear.
With the bear.
Whatever that one is terrible.
Yes.
And then Van is in the bed, like
She's in like the
luxuriating.
largest bed full of pillows.
King
and it's just
size
absolutely
duvet.
amazing. Yes.
Oh, man.
I'm so happy for them, you know?
Yeah,
oh,
that
my gosh.
that was a really fun couple little scenes
But
there.
unfortunately, the fantasy then takes another turn because Ty is more of a realist in this moment. And I don't know, it might be other Ty speaking through this in a way later on. But she says to Van, let's talk about this. Is it really a great idea that we go back to civilization? Has time moved on enough to accept our gay relationship? Because, early 90s, things were not so
I
great.
thought that was kind of cool how they put that in
I'm
there.
so happy they put that in there because when we were talking about the cabin fire, that was one of the reasons that in the back of our minds, we're thinking who did this? Well, maybe it was Van or Ty. Well, maybe it was other Ty because she's trying to prevent them from going back because that means that maybe she can't have that relationship with Van. And here we see in the current time, we've already discussed that other Ty will do almost anything to stay together with Van. Wild. So there's a really great moment there because Ty says, haven't you thought about this? Haven't you thought about this? Why is nobody thinking about what we're going to have to answer to?
Right, it's true. They're not focused on the consequences of any of the stuff. They're
all
just
the
like,
lies that they're going to have to remember and keep straight to everybody about all the things that they've done. She mentions Jackie. She mentions Javi. And this is what the best line here. She says, this place will follow us for the rest of our effing lives.
Yeah, I thought that was very poignant and very true because we are seeing it has been following them like 25 years later.
In that moment, though, Van says, going home outweighs all of that. But then we see definitely other Ty.
Yes.
And
we
her
see
little shadow friend.
the shadow friend with no eyes.
Yes. You can see that her agenda is no, maybe this isn't what we should be doing. Crazy. Now, we go into one of the fun huts, and we have, I would say, a conversation that I have been waiting for since episode 2, which was that initial reveal of the Melissa-Shauna dynamic, because we've never really gotten to see the two of them really connect. And I thought this was really cool because it was a nice moment for the actress, Jenna Burgess, to shine, and have some empathy for her because let's be honest, they have not painted this character in the best picture since day one, when she arrived in season 2, taking over for an extra jacket playing Melissa. She's always been maybe a little dumb or a little just kind of dismissive or just whatever. And obviously in this season so far, she's been Shauna's
beach.
So it was great to see her actually have something to say. And she's talking about, how she's so excited to get back to regular life. And she just wants a normal, boring life.
Yeah.
She just wants to get a stupid little job and she wants to go to college. And you can see that Shauna is not interested in this.
Yeah. Well, we know this at this point that Shauna is living her best life out here as the leader of all these people, like was she going to get to do this
right
back there in that little town?
No.
No. She'd be working at that supermarket.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really crazy scene. And there was a moment where they also are talking about the incident with the bow and arrow, right? Because Melissa's upset that Shauna didn't even really go in there to comfort her. And Shauna says, oh, I wasn't worried. Jen was taking care of you.
Yeah, I know you were fine. You were going to be fine. I was like thinking, you're being a real BB.
Again, Shauna sees these moths, these killer moths, we'll call them, because if you remember back in Silence of the Lambs, this moth was used by Buffalo Bill as sort of a calling card for his victims. They would be found with the moth in their mouth.
I remember this.
Obviously, Silence of the Lambs was a huge horror suspense film from the early 90s, which would be very much on Shauna's mind. And let's not forget that the big bad in that movie is Hannibal Lecter, who is a cannibal. So this is all tied into what they're doing out there, and this kind of, again, the struggle that Shauna and some of the others maybe are having of returning to the normal, boring life. Melissa wants to, Shauna does not. When she comes out of the dream, there's Melissa with that little knife sheath.
The knife holder. Yeah.
And she's, are you going to take this back with you? And Shauna's just like...
She seemed a little like, oh, do I have to? I was a little sad at that point.
It was sad. Justice for Melissa! Justice for Hat! Justice for Hat!
Justice for Hat. Maybe I'll get a little protest. Justice for Hat.
Now, before we continue on with the episode, guess what, Doug?
What?
Postcards from the edge.
We got a postcard from the edge.
We did. I first wanted to give a shout out again to all the amazing conversation that is going on over on YouTube. I wanted to give a special shout out to Miss McKay, who had a really great theory and conversation starter about Kodiak in the last episode. And she's kind of theorizing that maybe Kodiak maybe he is kind of like the Javi's friend or whatever, but he's been watching the Yellowjackets for quite some time. He comes back and forth, from civilization, and he's checking in on the Yellowjackets. I'm not going to go into it because it's really, really long, but you should definitely go check it out over on the comments for our last episode, Croak. Really good.
And speaking of comments, I just want to say, it would be great if you wanted to comment.
Right now!
Comment,
right now!
Just like us or subscribe.
Give me a hashtag team hat. Give me a hashtag team hat.
It's just, it's something very small that you can do to really help us. And it's been helping us. So
now, I really got a great question from Gmail. I've actually had this for a while. I've been sitting on it because it's really, really good. I want you to read this, okay?
All right.
I've been waiting on this. Is
Reading
a good one.
On the fly. This is from Cara in Portland. Playing catch up with your videos on YouTube. Great stuff. I'm curious though, because I haven't yet been able to figure it out. Who is your favorite Yellowjacket in the adult timeline? Or who do you relate to most? And which teen Yellowjacket were you most similar to in high school? Thanks for keeping me entertained while at work. Cara. Oh, I'm glad you're watching us at work. I love that.
Yeah, we like
That's
that. We
totally
like that.
up my alley.
Okay, so this is a really interesting question. It's kind of a little challenging because it can kind of change depending on the season, particularly when some of the adult casts have died.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, for me, I would say, when I thought about this, in season 1, my favorite adult Yellowjacket was Natalie. And that, partly because I just love Juliette Lewis's performance so much. But she's no longer with us, so I can't really say that she's my current favorite. What about you?
Well, I would say in the current timeline, I'm loving Misty, Christina Ricci. I really identify with the citizen detective thing.
Okay.
I identify with the being able to do the, I don't want to say I've ever cleaned up a crime scene, but I'm pretty darn good at getting rid of the stain.
He's pretty good with some Comet bleach and a scrub brush.
Bleach, chalk, simple green.
Even a lint brush.
Degreaser. I got it.
You got it.
So I do identify with her, and I like the sensibility.
Okay.
So that would be for my adult time.
For me, I have to say, when season 1 came out, I don't know if you remember this, there was one of these like social media clickbait, little questionnaires where it says, which Yellowjacket are you? And it came back that a big surprise.
You, Shauna?
Shauna.
Oh, you're so Shauna.
Now, what's weird is I don't really relate to her, to be perfectly honest. The person I actually relate to is Tai. And not because she's like other Tai and Tai. I'm not into that. But I do feel that she gives off some Capricorn vibes. She's driven. She's like, especially in season 1, I definitely felt that like Capricorn drive. So I will say probably for me, I relate most to Tai. But maybe, again, Natalie was probably my favorite adult Yellowjacket when she was.
Well, I'm going to say as for teens,
Okay.
I love Natalie. I guess I would say for that kind of time period, I would relate Well, maybe a little earlier in my
we actually
youth.
prepared with some photographs. Okay, we actually prepared with some.
I just brought one.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to bring more than one.
So who were you in high school? Which?
Well, you see, in high school though, that's a different thing. Who was I? I mean, I probably was a cross between Natalie and Misty, kind of a geek, but into like kind of hip stuff. Because I was a band geek.
Yeah.
So that's the whole...
I can totally see that.
I was a total band geek, but the band geeks were always like the total weirdos.
Uh-huh.
And so most of my friends were like kind of gothy, new wave people, punk and new wave
I can
music
totally
and stuff.
see it. I can
so
totally
like
see it.
that would be more my thing. Well, I pulled this photo out. This is from in the 90s.
Uh-huh.
I forget. I mean, this is in England somewhere. But anyway, that would have been...
That was you in the 90s.
That's me
Well,
in the
this
90s.
is literally a picture of me in high school. This is in class. I don't know if you can see that. Well, I'll probably scan it in or whatever. But yeah, I think I was probably a mix also of Misty, but then probably Shauna, I have to say, because I definitely was kind of like a smart, studious kid. I think that I was somewhat of a nerd, but I wasn't like super nerd, really. I was not in band. I wasn't that nerdy. You know what I mean?
No, you were a drama nerd.
I was a drama nerd, which fits in
that's
with the
always
Misty.
the way it was.
Fits in with the Misty, right?
Yeah.
There's another picture of me. That is senior year. I don't know if you can see that. And then, I actually, that's me with the cap backwards, right? I was a cap backwards dude. You know what I mean? That was the 90s. That was the look. There's me there. Here's another one you might like.
Oh, with Nana.
That's me with Nana, okay? And we both have our caps backwards. And that's probably 1996. That was the year that the Yellowjackets went missing. This is another picture of me from 1996, the year that the Yellowjackets went missing. So that was
look at that's like a little model photo.
It's kind of like it was vintage, vintagey look.
That's a model look.
Like a thrift store shopping.
Yeah,
that's
thrift
what
store
I
shopping.
was definitely a thrift store shopper, okay? And that's me with my best friend Eric wearing some kind of flannel vibes there. So yeah, for me, I was a Shauna Misty mix, and then you would have been a Misty Natalie mix.
Yeah.
I like that. And that's really a great question, Kara. So thank you for sending that in. If you would like to send us a question, you may do so using our Gmail, which is cviewcircle@gmail.com. And you can also message us over on Instagram or on Blue Sky or on TikTok. Thank you for all the love over on TikTok as well. That original video that we posted, the extra jackets with the trophy case, is almost nearing 500,000 views.
Yeah, which is
crazy.
really amazing. So now, will that ever translate into any monetary? I don't think so. But
help us.
It's good to know that people are watching.
Thank you for watching. All right, back to the episode. We have the familiar strains of Oasis Wonderwall. This is such a great callback. I don't know if you caught it, but way back in episode 3, The Dollhouse of season 1, they're having the funeral for their fallen teammate, Rachel Goldman. And I think it's maybe Van who says, "Oh, she'll never get to hear Wonderwall again."
Right, I remember that line.
So this is cool because here they are going home. And this is the moment where they're all packing up to leave. And that is such a great little tie-in because they are going to get to listen to Wonderwall again.
And they're going to get to order McDonald's, too.
They're going to get to order McDonald's.
So
they're going to be able
exciting.
to dip their fries into the milkshake and all this stuff. This is a great moment because it's almost like the same vibe you get on the final day of the Real World house where all the roommates are packing up their things and they're all kind of smiling and tearful and kind of nostalgic of their time. It was really cool, set to that music, and you see a lot of smiles and people are sort of giving back things that they've borrowed from each other. And then you even have this moment with Akilah, who's kind of kneeling down. She's washing a pot, and you can see this look on her face like she's thinking, "Oh my God, I can't believe I fell for all that." She's remembering what Travis had said about, Lottie and the visions, and she's just like, "Oh my God." But then
it gets real weird.
She returns back to the animal pen, and then suddenly I thought we were going to see the break in the golden hue of delusion.
Yeah, she had that moment, right? She's going to leave her beloved animals. And when she gets to that place, she has the vision that they're all dead. And that was really scaring me because I thought, is this real life at this point?
Yeah.
Or I thought, did somebody do this?
I know, I thought so too.
But then Lottie shows up. Crazy Lottie.
Oh my God.
And then everything goes back to normal.
Well, she says something like, "Did you see that? Like, how are the animals? Are they okay?"
Yeah.
And then Lottie's like, yeah, they're all fine. And then Lottie says, did you see something?
Yeah, I thought that was really weird.
And I was like, Lottie, stay away from Akilah. Step away. Leave her alone.
Well, I guess we still don't know whether is this real or is this not real. We still don't know.
Yeah,
There's something going on.
Yeah, I know.
Sure.
It is weird that they're kind of like pulling us back into this moment there. But I'm just going to say this. I didn't get to answer. That wasn't actually the question. But if I were to say who is my favorite of the younger teammates, for sure this season, it is Akilah. And probably since last season, too. I just really liked the way that character has been built upon since
They've
season
given
2.
her a lot more.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, the actress is super chic, especially this season. I think it's really nice that they have someone who is actually someone you care about, because as the seasons go on, they keep doing so many bad things.
She's the only one that hasn't done anything bad, I think. I mean, yes, has she eaten the spare ribs? Yes.
Probably, yes.
But that's
now,
okay.
I'm going to say also, Natalie is still someone that I think you root for sure, even though she's done these bad things, because at least you can see her grappling with what she's done. And this happens again in the next scene, because she goes back to the plane. I loved that they went back to the plane, because here we don't know. I mean, we know that they're still going to be out there for a couple months, but in this storyline, if you were just watching this, you wouldn't know that they aren't going to be rescued. So going back to the plane was a really cool moment.
I had a question though, because I wasn't quite sure. Like, I want to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
So she goes back, and was it Coach Ben's jacket, or was it his bones, or like, what was that?
Yeah, maybe it was his bones.
She was visiting Coach Ben.
It was definitely the jacket, and then there was the whistle on there.
Yeah.
And she says something like, oh gosh, Coach, I'm really sorry that you weren't here for this moment, because it would have been great.
But then it gets real spooky, because I kept thinking, like, is his ghost there? But there was definitely some weird spirit noise.
There was
something.
a presence. There was a rustling. I didn't know what was going on. I thought maybe we were going to see that moose again peering out of there. But what it reminded me of was a scene in season 2, which I'm afraid at this point of the time of our recording, I don't remember the episode or exactly where this was. But remember, there was that one scene where there's like these flashes and Natalie was back on the plane. And then for a moment, she was the antler queen, or at least she had that netting over her face. That's what this recalled to me. So there's obviously, I think that's foreshadowing that this isn't going to be as simple as they all thought it was.
Right. It's not going to be like, oh, you're going to be home tomorrow.
Right.
Like some shit's going to go down.
Yes.
Let's face it. Now, didn't she say something? She said, we're leaving or something like that.
Yes. Natalie is defiant.
Whatever
she says,
you are.
We are going home.
She said, whatever you are. Whatever you are. So she's aware of a spirit. I don't know. I'm buying that there is something there trying to keep them there.
Maybe we can talk about this now, or maybe we'll save it for later. I can at least say this part right now. They've definitely been kind of underlining this season that the wilderness is not responsible for as much of this supernatural stuff that we've believed. But I have to say, as a fan and as a citizen detective, what have you, I kind of want there to be a little supernatural. It doesn't have to be everything. I'm okay with the screaming trees being the frogs, but you still do want there to be a presence from Mother Nature, the wilderness, right? Because otherwise then I think as a viewer, you feel kind of stupid. Like it's the showrunners or the writers kind of pointing this in your face and then pulling it back. Because remember when Jackie was on the funeral pyre and that snow drops on her from the branch, that is a very deliberate camera move of this wind. And it's very it's showing a force to me.
Well, I'm going to just say this, and I want to go down this rabbit hole because we could go talk about this
forever.
But if you want to talk about the thing about nature spirits.
And hour 3 of the podcast.
You can Google it. But I mean, a lot of people do believe in this. Mm-hmm. I am somebody who believes in it. That there are spirits in nature.
I saw someone on TikTok who, again, was talking about this exact question. Is it supernatural? Is it not supernatural? Because, again, we're kind of leaning more into this way of thinking that it is not supernatural. It is all mental illness, so on and so forth. And this person said, I spent 6 months living in the forest, and I can tell you 100% there is some supernatural elements to the wilderness.
Yeah, I'm a believer.
I'm a believer, too, to be honest. And that's just where we stand at Seaview Circle.
Except that I'm scared to death to spend 6 months in the forest.
He's scared to spend 6 minutes in the forest. No, I'm kidding.
No,
6 hours.
6 hours is about my limit, because then I'm like, I got to go.
I'm into it. I don't want to say that I'm a quote-unquote tree hugger necessarily. I will hug a tree, but I have major reverence for trees.
I'm more of a Jolly Hitcher kind of person. I'll stay the Jolly Hitcher.
Okay.
Then I'll go out to the forest and come back
Okay.
to the restaurant.
Can I stay overnight in the forest?
You can stay out in
Okay.
the forest. I'll hang out at the bar.
Back at camp, we have now Natalie and Travis. They're back on their like original rifle duty. You know, they're pointing the weapons at Hannah and Cody, and they're like, let's lay down the law here for this exit strategy, getting out of the wilderness. You know, you try anything funny, we're going to kill you. And they're like, yeah, we figured that out. And they say, you know, we want to go home too. Trust me, we're all going to get out of here. So at that point, we have Natalie, who is sort of the cheerleader in this moment, says, all right, let's get the hell out of here.
Yeah, she is so happy. You can see she's so stoked to get the hell out of there. And then what happens? Here comes crazy Lottie. Makes an announcement.
Lottie says, I'm staying. And they're all just like, what? And I think there's a great line. Melissa says, oh my gosh, maybe you really are crazy. And I was thinking,
Yeah.
Duh.
And then
Didn't you just see her with all the wonder phrase last time? Did you see her eating the brain of the guy that she hatcheted?
ultimately Lottie is just saying that she can't go back because she would not be well, which I
Right.
found really sad.
This
because-
was interesting.
yeah.
She says to Natalie, you know, what do you have to go back home to? And
Yeah.
then she reveals what awaits her when she goes back home, which is the kind of thing we already saw before, right? Which is this parent duo that doesn't understand her schizophrenia at all. They don't agree on how to treat her. So she's fearful of what she's going to have to return to. And basically she realizes that out here, she can be who she is.
Well, and
You know what I mean?
I was thinking though,
Without medication. And it's a very sad moment because you really do realize that this person is going to struggle with the readjustment. I mean, they all are, but especially her, because we already know what that background is with the parents.
Yeah.
So to her, she says to everybody, I'm going to be safer here. Oh, it's terrible.
she is obviously aware that she's not mentally with it, but yeah, this is
And
her
I think
safe
it
place.
really is a connection to what we talked about in the last episode. Well, actually, it was the bonus content, if you caught the bonus episode of Croak, where we talked about Lottie recreating the wilderness at her intentional community, is because this is where she feels the most safe. And that is a really nice tie-in to that character. And it is very tragic.
Did you say tie-tie?
I didn't say that.
Oh, darn.
I didn't say it.
Well, I'd like to put a quarter in the bank anyway.
Natalie says, okay, fine. We're just going to leave you. We're going to go. And then we have another dissenter.
Yeah.
Because Shauna says, I'm also staying.
Well,
Now, did you notice there was a moment when Lottie says, you know, explains what she will be facing when she gets back home. Shauna looks at her, and that's kind of, it factors into her head too. Like, what will she be facing? We
Right.
don't know, because we don't know anything about Shauna's home life. But there's that moment where she realizes, okay, I'm going to stay here too. And I think part of it really is, again, that I think Shauna likes the excitement out here, right? This is who she
totally.
is.
Well, they mention this later too
Mhm.
about that's her whole thing, right? It's
Mhm.
about the excitement. It's about burning things down. Like that's how she's wired.
That's who she is. That's how she's wired.
Right.
Exactly.
So this works for
And
her.
now that she's got a companion out there in Lottie, she's staying. I love this line from Natalie. She says, oh, for fuck's sake, Shauna. She's like, no, come on. Shauna says, she turns to Lottie and she says, I'm not doing this for you, Lottie, and
Right.
I'm not doing it for it. She says, something just doesn't feel right.
yeah.
And then we got another one.
Then we got the third one.
Because
I wrote
Ty agrees.
right, and I wrote the three crazies.
Yeah.
That's what I wrote.
It's true. It's true.
I go, okay,
It's
the three craziest.
We've got Lottie. We've got Shauna, who is revealed to be really wacky in this episode. And then, of course, we have Ty, who has the split personality of the other Ty.
And you can see that Van is looking very upset at this point. Like, you really are not going to go.
Right. She's like, this is, everybody is like, this is rescue. What are you doing? And
Yeah.
Ty says, yeah, it doesn't feel right since those people came into the mix, meaning Hannah and Cody. So at that point, again, Natalie's like, okay, fine. I'm going to take everybody else and we're going to go.
But what happens? Shauna, the antler queen, is like, no, you're staying. She's not going to let them go. Which was like, I was like, oh boy.
I love again that we're seeing the young Natalie, who again appears more and more like the adult Juliette Lewis with the longer dark hair again. We also see a lot of the Yellowjackets are now wearing their Yellowjackets attire again. Their Letterman jackets, or you see Mari, again, she's back in that yellow sweatshirt. A couple of the other people are wearing very similar outfits to what they arrived in, which I thought was really a cool tie into the first couple episodes. And again, one of the things that kind of makes me a little fearful about the continuation of the series, and we'll get to it, is that we have been seeing these connecting points of the young character to the adult character. We talked about it with Natalie in a couple episodes. We talked about it with Lottie in the last episode. And I think now, you mentioned it, we're seeing it with the Shauna in this episode. These are the moments of the connection from the younger to the older.
Well, if anything, maybe what's happened is they've grown up to a level where, like, because this...
If you want a life lesson, get stuck out in the wilderness.
Right. These experiences have, like, shaped them. And, of course, this will shape their adult life, too. So you're seeing it happen pretty quickly compared to, say, a conventional timeline.
A normal, boring life.
You go to college, you do this, you get your first job.
Food at the grocery store.
You don't have to deal with any of that. You just go straight in. This is your new life, kids. So when we go back to the Jeff and Callie timeline, you know, Jeff is on the phone leaving a message for Misty, and he comes up with a great line. He calls her the four-eyed mushroom. You four-eyed mushroom, or whatever. Like, hangs up.
That hairstyle is a choice. Hairstyle is a choice.
So he's obviously not getting hold of Misty.
Oh my gosh,
he can't get a hold of Shauna.
Losing it. Jeff is completely losing it in this moment. I don't think Callie's even in there at the moment. Whether he's stuffing the pillow over his face, and then she comes in and she's like, "Dad,
he is.
Get it together."
This is really a weird kind of like the breakdown. Jeff is breaking down. He's finally like not taking any more of this on board.
To me, it was interesting because Callie's kind of now moving into Shauna mom mode in a way. She's taking charge. Now, this is a really weird scene, and I'm going to just apologize in advance if you're watching this. This is probably the scene that I can't quite totally contextualize. Callie says, I think that everything that mom has been saying is not true. I don't think anybody is actually following her. Nobody's harassing her. Nobody's stalking her. She has us holed up in this hotel for no reason. And Jeff lets it spill out, oh yeah, I don't think so either. And then they both kind of asked each other, why do you think that? But they both cannot answer that question. It's just like a feeling. Now, obviously, Callie may have read that note, right?
Well, this is where I felt like Callie was lying.
Right. She's holding back
covering
something.
She's definitely covering. So I'm going to say this. I guess we can't say that she's necessarily responsible for doing any of these things that the mother is suspicious of. But there's still the big Lottie factor. So I keep kind of thinking that this might have something to do with that cover-up.
Maybe Callie withheld the letter to make it appear as though it was some sort of stalking situation to get more information out of Shauna or something, right?
Maybe,
it becomes a big deal in the family. They got to start talking about it. Maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say. We don't know what's going on with this Lottie thing. It's very curious. What I found weird then as well is that Jeff kind of says the same thing, but then there is this moment in his face where it looks like he's withholding something too.
Yeah, I noticed that too. And that's what I was thinking. They look like they're both withholding something, but I don't know if they're necessarily together.
They're not together because they would have said something in that moment.
Well, so maybe partially, maybe Jeff is doing some of these things too, and maybe Callie
Wouldn't that
is
be
doing
funny?
some
They're
of these
both doing some of them.
Yeah, maybe they're both
doing
Jeff
closed the freezer door.
Yeah, maybe. He was there.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
Oh, my God.
Remember, he was doing the bingo calling. Where the heck that was.
Well, at any rate, they finally leave the the room and they go down, and there's this really weird moment with the cloud. They mention the cloud, how everything's done in the cloud, and there's just like this really weird stalling moment, and I think it's to kind of justify the fact that they run into the Joels again, but I also feel like there must be something else in that conversation.
I was thinking that too, because it was too weird. Like he just was trying to make a connection in the hotel. He wanted a human connection.
Something sane, something normal.
Yeah, something
maybe.
normal with the person working there. I mean, we worked in a hotel.
Yeah.
Some people want to talk.
For sure.
For
sure.
People.
But and if you take into context what the conversation appears to have been, let's say that neither one of them are really holding anything back and they were just talking about how, mom is crazy. She assumed all this stuff. She thought all of this was going on. She's super paranoid. She's super depressed that she needs all this attention. Maybe that's just their way of like focusing on that, because then when the Joels appear, he goes to talk to them And he immediately says, oh my gosh, my wife is the reason why that dinner went south. She is not clinically diagnosed, but she is crazy. And, that's just the way it is. I am not representative of that. So please put your trust in me. I can do this job. I can do it better than whoever you've chosen. And then they're like, and then he says to me like, haven't you ever fallen in love with an unhinged woman?
And then he makes a dig at them about, oh, well, they only date boring people or something.
And there's that moment where you can see that they're actually kind of impressed with Jeff. And so is Callie in this moment.
Yeah.
So now your question is,
why is the Joel's coming back?
Okay. So I hope this is not the case. But to me, this feels like a closure moment for Jeff, the character.
Oh, you mean like maybe divorce? Death?
End of the series?
Oh, no.
I mean, it certainly is a closure moment for this storyline of him being always in the shadow of Shauna.
Yeah.
And always, supplication, is that the word, to his wife. And here he is sort of taking the reins and doing something for himself and making a man of himself in this moment, impressing his daughter, impressing these guys. So it's like that affable guy is getting what he deserves.
Well, and maybe here's the other thing. Isn't it always with any show, even though we don't know yet if it's been picked up for another season, that they typically write these episodes so that if it did happen...
It's an arc, season arc.
Right. So if it's tied up in a little bow at the end-ish, it's okay.
And obviously there are still 2 episodes left and there's going to be some crazy stuff because when we go into the next scene, things go completely haywire.
Oh, they sure do. I got to tell you, I sure wished we had some little whiskey shots after that was over last night.
We didn't have any whiskey shots.
We didn't have any whiskey shots. I needed to calm myself down.
This was really interesting because immediately following that sequence with Callie and Jeff where they're talking about Shauna and how she's clearly mentally ill and they've really been ignoring it or not, seeing it for what it really is, you have Melissa laying it all down on the line.
And she
did. Says, all of these things that you're accusing me of, they're totally explainable. You are just paranoid. You are just thinking this all happened. Even Lottie's death, isn't it a possibility that she just had an accident after several years of having this mental illness? None of this happened. You are insane. And I think even before she accused her of being insane, and Shauna said, no, I'm not insane. So we're talking about Alex, how she's married and how crazy that is that Melissa has married Alex, the daughter of Hannah, who they killed out in the wilderness. That's not a normal life, is it?
No, that is so not normal.
Right? By the way, we forgot to mention about that, about how she said something like, you don't get to have a normal life.
Right, you don't get to have a normal life. And in a way, it's true. Melissa wants to have the normal life, but let's face it, if any of that information came out, don't you think that would blow up the relationship? It's too weird.
And so Shauna now has that as leverage again. Yeah. Now, in that moment, also, this is from the last scene where she asks her, oh, well, because she sees Callie calling on the phone and she says, oh, that's your daughter. Have you told her about all the stuff?
Yeah.
And Shauna says, yes. And Melissa says, does she still love you? And then Shauna says, yes, she does. And Melissa says, who's lying now?
Right. She really she really called her on her shit. But so it was just really intense.
Yeah, this last sequence, she's basically saying, like you said it before, you this is who you are. You strike a match, you light your whole world on fire because you want to see how it all turns out. You want to have everybody coming to you. You want to get all your friends involved in your life.
She hates herself so much that she wanted everybody else to be as full of as misery as you are.
Yeah,
or something
as miserable
like that.
as you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to burn it all down. And it really shows Shauna in that moment. She sees how paranoid she has been and how depressed she really is with the state of her life. And finally, Melissa pushes her too far when she says, you want this excitement in your life. And she does.
And then what happens?
She stabs her first.
She stabs her first with a knife, in her, I don't know if it's in the shoulder or somewhere. But then Shauna bites her.
Well, she wrestles her to the ground first and punches her.
Punches her a bunch.
A couple of really...
But then she gets some good punches in on
That's right.
Melanie Linsky,
That's right,
too.
She's all bloody.
She's all bloody. I was thinking, we don't know what's going to happen next.
Well, we have seen the promo image of Melissa, Hilary, Swank out on the road somewhere, all bloody. So this has obviously happened after.
Okay.
But before we get to that point, probably in the next episode, we have what is really the most chilling moment here, which, again, is now Shauna using this leverage that she knows that Alex doesn't know about this stuff. She says after she takes a bite out of Melissa's arm.
So disgusting. And she has it like.
I wonder if she had that with fava beans and a nice Chianti.
I wasn't sure at first. Like, did she bite the arm or did she bite the ear? Because I
I
was getting the Jackie
only
ear.
Reserved for Jackie.
Okay, ears are for Jackie.
Ears are for Jackie. But
shoulders are for Melissa.
I really do think, though, that this is all connected to the Jackie stuff. I really, really do. Yeah. Obviously, the Melissa, this, and now we have this. So she basically says she takes the bite out of it. She's got the piece of her skin, like, falling out of her mouth.
So gross.
She takes it. She says, eat it.
Yeah, I was so gross.
And Melissa says, you really are insane. And she says, well, if you don't eat this, I'm going to reveal to your family everything.
But I don't think we got to see her eat it, did we?
No, she didn't.
So gross. So that ends it for this week.
So, I mean, this is where I get into this discussion about where is this going? Like, you know, I really wonder if we're going to have another season. Why do I think that? Because if you take away a lot of this supernatural element from the wilderness, and then you also take away all this mystery and suspicion from the adult timeline, right? None of that stuff may have happened.
I have a feeling it's all going to come back.
I know. I do know these writers. I do know they take you one way and then they just whip you back.
We said it's a roller coaster.
But my point is, if you were left with a storyline where we just know that Shauna's, unhinged and needs mental assistance and, there is no Lottie murder and all stuff, like, what are you really left with?
Yeah.
I don't know.
They said they got 5 seasons.
I just think that if you take away the supernatural stuff, if you take away some of the mystery in the adult timeline, what do the citizen detectives have to talk about? You know what I mean? So they're going to really have to figure something out.
They're going to ramp it up. Don't worry. It's coming.
Because we already know. We already know what happens to Melissa now. That's no longer even a story that they need to tell.
Well, we got Barbara.
Here's my hope is this. My hope is that when we get to the end, that there are still actually more survivors than we even ever imagined. So we have that final scene of the feast where they're all wearing the outfits, right? There's only 8 people there, and there are now 8 survivors officially. But my hope is that that's just one tribe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where are the other people? I don't know. Maybe they ate them all. But it is really interesting when you think about, say, an Akilah or whatever. They could have Akilah survive, couldn't they?
That's true.
Ultimately. And then she could come back. I don't know. At this point, how many more survivors could they be that they've not talked about? I don't know.
Crystal could come back, too.
Yes!
I doubt it.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. Someone was saying also that, going back to that Aesop's fable with Kodiak, that when he talks about the frogs needing a king and they send the heron, maybe he is the antler queen.
I've seen people saying the antler king, but
okay,
I don't know.
I think that would be sort of a divisive situation with the fan base, right?
I think so, because I think the fact of the matter is we don't need male kings. Okay,
right? Especially not in the
storyline. We need no male kings. Period.
I agree.
We need antler queens.
All right.
Only.
So, did you have a favorite line or a favorite scene or anything like that?
Well, I kind of said I thought that the tie scene.
We discussed it.
We kind of talked about it.
The best line of all time.
Yeah, about.
I loved when Natalie had said that line to Shauna when they're kind of breaking up. That was the survivor unmerge. You were seeing it happen right there in real time. Those people over there, those people over there.
I was certainly on the seat of my pants.
That was my favorite scene, I have to say. That scene where they all split up and people are staying behind. I thought that was really, really cool. Okay, so now I think we're coming in for a landing on this episode finally to get right down to the Lotus Point. This is our gauge of how highbrow or lowbrow this episode was. Douglas, did you come up with a brow meter score for this 8th episode?
I'm coming up with
season 3.
A higher number, I think, than I did last week. Between 1 and 5.
Right.
I'm going to give this a 3.75.
Okay, yeah.
Because I feel like it was a lot of highbrow with a lot of that exposition of Melissa, there's, Shauna, Jeff. I mean, there was a lot more writing in this one.
Yeah.
There were some fun moments that, took it
But
down
I think
bit.
even the funny moments were sort of like on a more highbrow or more higher brow platform. In other words, like if you see Misty having a toilet out in the wilderness. I think that's really, really clever. You know, that's exactly what you would start thinking, these teens who've been out there for so long. So I agree. I would say 3.75 is a really solid number for this particular episode as well. So I will give it that. I think it was a really fun ride, and it definitely gave us some thrills as well, and also answered a lot of questions. I just hope not too many.
It was packed. That's the only thing I could say. And I mean, it's going to be reflected in this recap too, because there was a lot to go through in this one.
Yeah.
So
as we head into the next episode, it is called How the Story Ends.
Uh-oh.
I mean, that's what I'm telling you.
I don't like that.
Okay, so is this going to be the penultimate episode of Yellowjackets next week?
Well, maybe what's going to happen. How about this? What if they're leaving the wilderness, but then the next season is them going back
I
to
think that would be
civilization?
fun to see. Obviously, we know from Misty going to Natalie's storage room, there's a photo of Natalie being arrested in 2003. Would love to see what that's all about. I would love to see Shauna and Jeff's wedding in 2001. I think that would be really fun. So maybe that will be what happens. Now, I did see something, though. Someone had a clever thought. The title of the episode is How the Story Ends. Obviously, first thought is, oh my gosh, they're going to leave the wilderness. This is the end. Da, 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 da. But, you know, they're so clever, these people, and they've always thrown these curveballs at us.
They're always throwing a curveball.
So someone suggested that if you say, here's where this story ends.
That's the song by the Sundays.
It is. I hope they play it.
The story ends.
What a great song. But who's the storyteller of the Yellowjackets?
Van.
Right. Yeah. She's the one who's always describing the plots of the movies. She's the one who I think it's episode 9 of last season, the finale episode of last season, she tells the story of the Yellowjackets. And then again, at the beginning of this season, she tells the story of what happened since the cabin fire. So when the title is, here's how the story ends, perhaps this is going to be the end of Van. Right? And again, you know, maybe she finalizes it herself because of the dream she just had.
Yeah.
Maybe she sees what this is doing to Ty. But again, that's why I feel like, oh my gosh, where is this show going if you have like literally no adult cast members left? Maybe they're going to phase out the adult storyline completely. That is another possibility.
Oh boy.
And maybe they would just have the teenagers.
Well, I guess you got to see what the ladies are up to in their contract, see what they got lined up for the next.
Oh my gosh.
Look on IMDb to see what projects are in the works. Then maybe we can find out.
Well, it's funny because when we spoke to Liv the other day at the Mid-Century Modern premiere, we said, oh gosh, we hope there's a season 4 and 5. And they said, yeah, me too. And I think there was also an interview with Sami Hanratty recently where the person asked about future seasons, even though it's not been renewed yet. And she said, yeah, we hope we're able to tell the story the way it was meant to be told.
Yeah, I guess that's something they at this point in the season, they don't know. But I bet you in the next couple of weeks they'll know.
Maybe even in the next couple of days. Maybe by the time this airs.
Wouldn't that be good? I hope
see.
so.
Anyway, we will be back next week to tell you how the story ends. Which story we don't know.
Yeah.
And
so,
stay hungry, friends. And we will see you then back on the sack. Thank you for joining us for what is probably a very long episode.
It's a very long one.
Woo!
Bye.
Bye.